you all are fine there. So, in the last lecture, I have discussed about the anatomy and physiology related to the gallbladder. And after that, I have to discuss about the various imaging related to the gallbladder. But I have voluntarily skipped that because all those investigations they have been covered under the heading liver. So today we will discuss one of the common pathology related to the gallbladder, that is gallstone. So gallstone, they are also called as cholelithiasis. So they are the most common biliary pathology. You must be knowing that many of the patient in our OPD, they come with the complaint related to the gallstone, and in our OT, many of the surgery they are done for gallstone. So cholecystectomy is one of the most commonly performed procedure uh, on gallbladder. So it is estimated that gallstone affect 10 to 15% of the population. So it is a very common condition. Although most of the gallstone they are asymptomatic. So they are asymptomatic in majority of the patient, that is in more than 80% of the patient. So it is a very common condition, but still most of the patient they are asymptomatic. The gallstone they can be divided into three main types. The one first is pure cholesterol stones. They are very less common. They are responsible for only 10% of the cases. Next type is pigment stone, which is also not so common. The mixed stone, they are most common type of gallstone. So this is another MCQ question, which is the most common type of gallstone. It is the mixed stone. So cholesterol stone, they are formed by the precipitation of the cholesterol. Pigment stone, they are caused by the precipitation of the bile pigment, whereas mixed stone, they contain various mixture of cholesterol, calcium salt, bile acid, bile pigment, and phospholipids. So first about the cholesterol stone. Cholesterol stone, they are composed mainly of cholesterol. So cholesterol constitute more than 50% of the stone, and it comprises of multiple layers of cholesterol and mucin glycoproteins. So the main constituent of this stone is cholesterol, and rest it can be bile pigment, bile salt, and phospholipids. But pure gallstone, they are very uncommon and account for less than 10% of the gallstones. They are usually occur single large stone with smooth surface. So a pure cholesterol stone is usually single stone. It is a very large stone, and it is a fiber type of stone, and it usually has a smooth surface. However, most other cholesterol stone they contain variable amount of bile pigments and calcium. So pure cholesterol stone they are very rare. Most of the stone they contains cholesterol and other constituent like bile pigment and calcium. Now coming to the pigment stone. Pigment stone they are of two types, black and brown. Black pigment stone, they are composed of an insoluble bilirubin pigment polymer mixed with an calcium phosphate and calcium bicarbonate. So black stone, they are composed of insoluble bilirubin plus calcium phosphate and calcium bicarbonate. They are usually seen in condition of hemolysis like hereditary spherocytosis or sickle cell disease. So they are common in hemolytic disorder. Black stone, pigment stone, they are usually small, brittle, black, and sometimes they are speculated. So this is a picture showing black pigment stone. You can see this stone, they are multiple, they are speculated stones and they are black in color. Now coming to the brown pigment stone. The brown pigment stone, they contain calcium bilirubinate, calcium palmitate, calcium stearate, and bacterial cell wall. The brown stone, they are very rare in the gallbladder. So they are usually seen in CBD. They are very rare in gallbladder. They forms in the bile duct and are related to the bile stasis and infected bile. So two prerequisites for brown pigment stone formation is that first there should be bile stasis, and second is that your bile should be infected. So usual bacteria is E. coli, which secrete beta glucuronidase enzymes that cleavage the bilirubin glucuronide to produce the insoluble unconjugated bilirubin. So usually in the bile, the bilirubin is in the conjugated form. So when there is superadded bacterial infection, there is release of this enzyme beta glucuronidase, which uh, cleaves the conjugated bilirubin into unconjugated bilirubin, which is insoluble, and this insoluble unconjugated bilirubin get deposit to form the stone. So this unconjugated bilirubin will precipitate with the calcium along with the dead bacterial cell bodies to form the brown pigment stones. So brown pigment stone, mind you, they are very rare in gallbladder, but they are very common in CBD. And these stones, they are commonly seen in Asian population. So these are very common in Asian population. Now coming to the third type, that is mixed stone. So this is the most common type of stones. 80% of the gallstone, they are of mixed type stone, and they contain cholesterol and variable amount of bile pigment and calcium. These stones are usually multiple size, multifaceted, and mulberry shaped. So there are four M's. M mixed stone, they are of multiple size, they are multifaceted and mulberry shape. So the color of this stone is variable. It basically depends upon which constituent is predominant. So it can be whitish if the calcium is predominant, it can be yellow if cholesterol is predominant, or it can be green to black. So this color of mixed stone is variable. So you can see in this photograph, these are mixed gallstone having they are multifaceted and of variable size. So now coming to the what are the risk factor for gallstone. So the first risk factor for gallstone is female sex. The women, they are 3 times more likely to develop gallstone than the men. So this is the old saying is that a fertile female with 40 years of age is a risk factor for gallstone. Female, fertile, fatty, and woman is a risk factor for gallstone. Second is obesity. Obesity, it is defined as when body mass index is more than 30 kilogram per meter square. So obesity is a risk factor for gallstone. Third risk factor is pregnancy. So gallstone is a very common condition in pregnancy. Fourth risk factor is fatty foods. All those patients who takes more fatty foods, they are more prone for gallstone. Crohn disease, terminal ileal resection. Any disease in which we have to resect the terminal ileum, like in enteric perforation, sometimes we have to resect the terminal ileum. So in those cases, we have to create ileostomy. So in ileostomy patient, there are increased chances of gallstone. Why it is so? I will tell you later on. Why the gallstone, they are common in those patients. The other risk factor are hereditary spherocytosis, sickle cell disease, and thalassemia. So all these hemolytic disorder, they can lead to pigment stone. Rapid weight loss. First degree relatives of a patient with gallstone. And there are some drugs which are associated with gallstone formation. These include your cephalosporin, third generation cephalosporin, ceftriaxone, postmenopausal estrogen therapy, or TPN. So these are the risk factor for gallstone. Now coming to the gallstone pathogenesis. Basically, the pathogenesis of cholesterol gallstone, it involves 3 stages. The first is cholesterol supersaturation in bile. Second is crystal nucleation. Third is stone growth. Basically, if you see constituent of the bile, it consists of bilirubin, then it consists of your bile salts, bile pigment, phospholipid lecithin. So if and cholesterol. So when there is increased chances of gallstone, it is when there is either increase in the cholesterol or there is decrease in the bile salt. So this is the main pathology behind the gallstone formation. So any condition which increases the cholesterol level, like fatty food, obesity, or there is decrease in the bile salt. What are the conditions in which there is decrease in the bile salt? Any pathology related to the liver pathology, then there is decreased synthesis of bile salt. Second, there is enterohepatic circulation. 75 to 80% of the bile acids, bile salt, they are absorbed in the terminal ileum, and then they are recirculated to the liver. So any condition in which there is resection of the terminal ileum, this enterohepatic circulation is not there, so there will be decreased bile salt in the circulation, leading to gallstone formation. So the first step in the gallstone formation is cholesterol supersaturation. As you know, cholesterol in the bile is maintained in the solution form by the formation of a micelle, which is a bile salt phospholipid cholesterol complex. So cholesterol is present in the bile in the form of micelle, which is a bile salt phospholipid and cholesterol complex. And this micelle holds the cholesterol in a stable thermodynamic state. So this micelle formation is required to hold the cholesterol in a stable thermodynamic state. And for that, phospholipid is required. When bile is supersaturated with cholesterol, or bile acid or phospholipid concentration are low, cholesterol crystal may nucleate and stone may form. So the first prerequisite to form a gallstone is cholesterol supersaturation. How cholesterol supersaturation will lead to stone formation? Because when there is cholesterol supersaturation or any condition in which there is decreased bile acid or decreased phospholipid concentration, then your cholesterol crystal will nucleate and form the stone. So this is the first step in the formation of gallstone. The second stage is crystal nucleation. The cholesterol will only crystallize from a supersaturated solution if there is a nidus. So first condition is that there should be cholesterol supersaturation. The second condition is that there should be some nidus on which the crystal can form, and this process is called as nucleation. So what is nucleation? Nucleation is the deposition of cholesterol crystal on a nidus. So what are the different nidus for a gallstone? It can be mucus glycoproteins from the gallbladder wall and bilirubinate. These are the two nucleating factors for this cholesterol to form the stone. So mucus glycoprotein and bilirubinate, these are the two nucleating factors. The nuclease phenomena also depend upon the gallbladder function. So the motility of the wall determines the degree of stasis and mixing of the bile within the lumen. So for proper mixing, your gallbladder should be normal functioning. So any condition in which your gallbladder is not normally functioning, that can lead to your stone formation. So second stage is crystal nucleation. Obesity, high caloric diet, and certain medication like oral contraceptive, they can increase the secretion of cholesterol and supersaturate the bile, increasing the lithogenicity of the bile. And dissection of the terminal ileum, which diminishes the enterohepatic circulation, will deplete the bile acid pool and result in cholesterol supersaturation. So if you see this diagram, these are the various factors which leads to gallstone formation. Like first is your bile should be supersaturated. What are the conditions which leads to supersaturation bile? First is increasing age. In old age, your bile is supersaturated. Second is sex. The bile is supersaturated with cholesterol, usually in females. Genetics, obesity, and diet full in uh, fatty foods. The second condition is when there is impaired gallbladder function. When when will your gallbladder function will be deranged? If there is emptying is not proper. So when there is no emptying, when patient is having prolonged fasting. So prolonged fasting is a risk factor for gallstone formation. Why fasting is a factor for gallstone formation? Because due to fasting, your gall bladder will remain distended. It will not empty properly, and that will lead to formation of a nidus in the gallbladder wall, leading to deposition of supersaturated cholesterol. Second, if there is any malfunction with the uh, absorption in the gallbladder wall, as you know, the gallbladder wall it secretes the mucus. So if there is any abnormality in the mucus secretion or absorption in the bile, it will lead to gallstone formation. Then there are some cholesterol nucleating factor like mucus or glycoprotein, or if there is infection in the gallbladder wall, or if there is any uh, defect in the enterohepatic circulation of the bile acid, like some drug like deoxycholate, if bowel transit time is increased, or there is ileal resection or cholestyramine. So any of these conditions they affect the enterohepatic circulation of the bile acid, and that lead to formation of gallstone. So if you see the main three factors which leads to gallstone formations are: one is disturbance of bile biochemical feature, that is there is increase in lithogenicity of the bile. Second is infection, because the your bacteria wall it act as a nidus. And third is if there is dysfunction of the gallbladder and bile duct, it will lead to gallstone formation. So this is the main pathogenesis behind the gallstone formation. Now coming to the clinical presentation. So how gallstone they will present? As I have told you, 80% of the gallstone they are asymptomatic. So the gallstone may remain asymptomatic throughout the life of many patients. In a few patients, stone are discovered by accident during the investigation of some other problem. So sometimes they are incidentally discovered while doing ultrasound for some other pathology. You can discover the gallstone. If the gallstone they are asymptomatic and patient is having no symptom relating to the stone, then the general principle is that this stone should be left alone. So indication of cholecystectomy is not presence of gallstone. It is the symptomatic gallstone which is a indication for cholecystectomy. It is not asymptomatic gallstone which is a indication for cholecystectomy. It is the symptomatic gallstone which is a indication for cholecystectomy. So why asymptomatic patients should not be treated with cholecystectomy? This is because in a study of patients in whom gallbladder stone were discovered on screening, only 15% developed biliary pain in the subsequent 15 years. So you can see only few of them will develop symptom later on. That is why cholecystectomy is indicated only in symptomatic patient, not in asymptomatic patient. So the question is, what are the clinical presentation of gallstone? And the second question is, what are the effects and complication of gallstone? So these are the different presentation, effects and complication of gallstone. So how a gallstone can present? It can present with variety of clinical syndromes which include biliary colic, acute cholecystitis, chronic cholecystitis, empyema of the gallbladder, mucocele, perforation of the gallbladder, biliary obstruction, that is choledocholithiasis leading to obstructive jaundice, Acute cholangitis, where patient will present with pain, fever, jaundice. Charcot triad, acute pancreatitis, and last is sorry, and sometimes patient can present to you with small bowel obstruction, which is called as gallstone ileus. So these are the different presentation of gallstone, or we can say these are the effects and complication of gallstone. So out of all these presentation or syndromes, the most common presentation of gallstone is with symptom of chronic cholecystitis. So about 2/3 of the patient with gallstone, they will present with chronic cholecystitis. So what are the symptoms of chronic cholecystitis? The patient will present to you with complaints of recurrent attacks of right hypochondrial or epigastric pain. And this pain is usually after meals, particularly after consumption of fatty foods. So patient will come to you with complaint of pain in the epigastrium region or right hypochondrium region. And this pain is usually after meal, that is late in the night, and this pain is usually when there is consumption of fatty food. So the pain which often occurs at night, it is mild to moderate severe pain in the right upper quadrant that may radiate round to the back and sometimes to the right shoulder or between the shoulder blades. So what are the location of the pain? It is in the epigastrium or right hypochondrium. This pain will radiate to the back, sometimes to the right shoulder, and sometimes between the shoulder blades. So you can see this site of the pain is very variable. It is starting from epigastrium, right hypochondrium, back, right shoulder, and between the shoulder blades. And this pain is constant and it will increase in the severity over the first half hours or so and typically last about 1 to 5 hours. And the pain is episodic, means the patient will suffer discrete attack of pain between which they feel well. So there will be attack of pain, then patient will become asymptomatic, then after 5 to 10 days or months, patient will again develop pain, and after that patient will become well. So this is the pain is episodic. So what is the pathology behind this pain? The pain develops when a stone obstructs the cystic duct, resulting in a progressive increase of tension in the gallbladder wall. So why there is pain in cholecystitis? This is because of the increased tension in the gallbladder wall. And why there is increased tension in the gallbladder wall? Because the stone is obstructing the cystic duct, preventing the emptying of the gallbladder. And this pain is usually accompanied by nausea and sometimes with vomiting. So the main symptoms of chronic cholecystitis is pain in the right hypochondrium, which radiates to the back. Sometimes it is present in the right shoulder, sometimes it is present between the shoulder blades, and this pain is usually associated with nausea and vomiting. And there can be other additional minor symptoms like flatulence and abdominal distension. So these are the associated symptoms in chronic cholecystitis. So what are the physical findings? If you do physical examination of a patient with chronic cholecystitis, what are the physical findings? You will find mild right upper quadrant tenderness, but mind you, this tenderness is present only if there is an episode of pain. If there is no pain, you will not find any tenderness in the right upper quadrant. So tenderness is only there if there is episode of the pain. If the patient is pain free, the physical examination is unremarkable. Means you will find for abdominal finding absolutely normal if there is no pain. And laboratory investigation like WBC count and liver function test, they are usually normal in patient with uncomplicated gallstone. So in a chronic cholecystitis patient, usually lab investigation, they are usually within normal limit. So these are the physical findings and laboratory finding in chronic cholecystitis. So what are the differential diagnosis of chronic cholecystitis? So what are the different condition in which there can be pain in the right hypochondrium? So these are the differential of pain in the epigastrium and right hypochondrium. These includes peptic ulcer disease, gastroesophageal reflux disease, hiatus hernias, irritable bowel disease, diverticular disease, liver disease like liver abscess or hepatitis, renal calculi. If renal colic is there, it can mimic with cholecystitis, pleuritic pain, and myocardial pain. So you can see there are so many differential of pain in the right hypochondrium. So if a patient is having pain in right hypochondrium, it does not mean that he or she will always have gallstone. You have to rule out all these conditions by doing physical examination and by doing investigation. So how diagnosis is made? It is often possible to make a confident clinical diagnosis in a patient with classical symptoms, but the presence of gallstone should be confirmed by ultrasonography. So you can see there are so many differential diagnoses of pain in the right hypochondrium, and to confirm the diagnosis, you have to always do ultrasound. Ultrasound, if a patient is having pain in the epigastrium or right hypochondrium, which typically starts after taking food, it radiates to the back or sometimes to the right shoulder, and there is associated nausea and vomiting, and on ultrasound there is gallstone, then most probably this pain is because of gallstone, right? If there is no gallstone on the ultrasound, you should rule out other differential of uh, this gallstone, which can be peptic ulcer disease, gastroesophageal, hiatal hernia. All these conditions, they can be ruled out by doing upper GI and endoscopy, right? So you can rule out peptic ulcer disease, GRD, or hiatal hernia by doing upper GI endoscopy. And for other condition, you may require specific investigation, like for pleuritic pain, you have to go for chest X-ray. For myocardial pain, you have to do ECG. So in a patient with pain which is mimicking with cholecystitis, you should always rule out all these conditions by doing other investigation. Like sometimes patient can have a pain of myocardial infarction. So you have to always do ECG in a patient with pain in the epigastrium and right hypochondrium. So you can make the diagnosis based on the clinical classical sign and symptoms and on ultrasound. And for to rule out other differential, you have to do other radiological and endoscopic examination. And what is the treatment? So if a diagnosis of chronic cholecystitis is made, what will be the treatment? Once the diagnosis is established, some form of active treatment is indicated, as the symptoms will almost always continue. So patient OPD में आता है, वो कहता है जी आपने बताया कि you have gallstone, वो कहता है जी मुझे दवाई दे दो, मुझे ऑपरेशन नहीं करवाना. तो you have to explain to the patient कि आप हो सकता है दवाई देने से अभी आप ठीक हो जाएं, but your symptoms will continue. So the main treatment, or you can say permanent treatment for chronic cholecystitis is always surgery. It is not conservative management. You can manage patient conservatively for some times, but ultimately you have to do surgical treatment, and the surgical treatment is cholecystectomy. So you have to do cholecystectomy in all those patients who are having symptoms of chronic cholecystitis. The second common presentation is with biliary colic. So what are the presentation of biliary colic, and how the sign and symptoms of biliary colic, they are different from chronic cholecystitis and acute cholecystitis, and what is the management of biliary colic? So biliary colic is due to impaction of a stone in the neck of the gallbladder, right? So here the symptoms are because of impaction of stone in the neck of the gallbladder. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms are, they are very similar to the chronic cholecystitis. That is, patient will have severe pain, start abruptly in the epigastrium, often at night after a heavy meal, and last for several hours. The pain is constant and usually lasts 1 to 5 hours, and usually associated with restlessness, vomiting, and sweating. So the pain is so severe in biliary colic that patient will be restless. He or she will have nausea and vomiting and sweating. If pain persists longer than 1 day, acute cholecystitis is likely the underlying etiology. So in biliary colic, usually the pain lasts for 1 to 5 hours. If the pain is lasting longer than 1 day, that is 24 hours, then most probably diagnosis is acute cholecystitis. So in biliary colic, there is severe pain in the epigastrium, lasts for 1 to 5 hours, associated with sweating, restlessness, and nausea and vomiting. The pain may radiate through to the back, but does not radiate to the shoulder, as in acute cholecystitis and chronic cholecystitis. So usually pain may radiate to the back, but does not radiate to the shoulder in biliary colic. So if you do general physical examination, a patient in obvious severe pain may have mild tachycardia and normal temperature. So in a patient with biliary colic, there is not severe tachycardia. There can be slightly raised in the pulse rate, and there is no fever. There is no fever and no tachycardia. Abnormal abdominal examination may show only mild tenderness in the epigastrium and no guarding and no rigidity, right? These features are contrast to acute cholecystitis, because in acute cholecystitis there is severe tachycardia, usually patient is febrile, and there will be severe tenderness in the epigastrium and right hypochondrium, and there can be guarding and rigidity in the right hypochondrium. So why it is important to differentiate between the acute cholecystitis and biliary colic? This is important because patient with biliary colic can be managed on OPD basis. Means you just have to give analgesic and antispasmodic to the patient, and patient will be relieved. And there is no indication for admission to the patient in biliary colic. But because patient with biliary colic will not develop any complication, but patient with acute cholecystitis can develop severe complication like GB perforation. So there are no chances of GB perforation in case of biliary colic, but a patient of acute cholecystitis can develop GB perforation. So it is important to differentiate between acute cholecystitis and biliary colic. And how you can differentiate between acute cholecystitis and biliary colic? This is based upon your general physical examination. Like on general physical examination, a patient with biliary colic will have only slight tachycardia and patient will be afebrile. Whereas a patient of acute cholecystitis will have severe tachycardia and patient is usually febrile. If you do pre-abdominal examination in a patient with biliary colic, there will be only mild tenderness with no guarding, no rigidity. Whereas a patient of acute cholecystitis will have severe tenderness in the epigastrium and right hypochondrium, and there can be guarding and rigidity. And mind you, there is a sign which is called as Murphy's sign. So Murphy's sign is always positive in case of acute cholecystitis, and it is negative in case of biliary colic. So this is most commonly uh, differentiating point between acute cholecystitis and biliary colic. So diagnosis of biliary colic is usually made by clinical presentation of colic pain and presence of gallstone ultrasound. So what is the treatment of biliary colic? Most patients need a strong analgesic given by injection after 2 or more attacks of severe. So most of the patient, they can be managed by simple analgesic. So if the patient is developing recurrent attack of severe biliary colic pain, then patient will require definitive treatment in the form of surgery. At operation, the gallbladder is often normal on external appearance and shows only mild inflammatory changes on histopathological examination. So, if you do cholecystectomy in a patient of biliary colic, then during the surgery you can find that the gallbladder is usually normal on gross appearance, and even on histopathology there will be only mild inflammatory changes, whereas in a patient with acute cholecystitis or chronic cholecystitis you will find gallbladder is thick walled, it is contracted, and it will be pathological on gross appearance as well as on histopathological examination. So sometimes while doing cholecystectomy, laparoscopic cholecystectomy, you will see absolutely normal gallbladder. तो कई बार पूछते हैं कि ये तो गॉल ब्लैडर नॉर्मल है, फिर आप क्यों सर्जरी कर रहे हो? सो इन पेशेंट हु आर हैविंग रिकरेंट अटैक ऑफ biliary colic, then on gross appearance their gallbladder can be normal, but recurrent attack of biliary colic is an indication of cholecystectomy. The third common presentation is with acute cholecystitis. So now I am enumerating various presentation of the gallstone. First, we had discussed about the most common presentation as chronic cholecystitis. The second presentation is as biliary colic. Now coming to the third most common presentation, that is as acute cholecystitis. So about 1/5 of the patient with gallstone, they will present with acute cholecystitis, and it is usually due to persistent impaction of a stone in the neck of the gallbladder. In biliary colic, the impaction is transient, whereas in acute cholecystitis, this impaction is for a longer time. Because the cystic duct is occluded, the inflammatory process is particularly aggressive. So because of this persistent impaction, there will be aggressive inflammatory process in cases of acute cholecystitis. So there will be superadded bacterial infection, and the gallbladder wall itself is grossly thickened and edematous, and the underlying mucosa may show hyperemia or patchy necrosis. So what are the clinical presentation of a patient with acute cholecystitis? Again, very similar to biliary colic, pain in the right upper right hypochondrium or epigastrium. But what is the difference? In the duration, the pain of biliary colic usually persists for 1 to 5 hours, whereas pain of acute cholecystitis will be there for next 2 to 3 days, right? And because in acute cholecystitis, the inflammation extends to the parietal peritoneum, the pain is usually localized and it hurts the pain to move or during the movement or breathing. That is why Murphy's sign will be positive. So what is the pathology behind the positive Murphy sign? This is because the inflammation extends to the parietal peritoneum. Whereas in case of chronic cholecystitis and in biliary colic, usually Murphy sign is not positive. And patient of acute cholecystitis usually feel unwell, they can be febrile, and anorexia can be there. Anorexia is not there in cases of biliary colic and chronic cholecystitis, but in acute cholecystitis, patient will be febrile and anorexic. If you do pre-abdominal examination, you can general physical examination, you will find some degree of fever and tachycardia. And mild jaundice can be present in 10 to 15% of the patient with acute cholecystitis. And you will find right hypochondrial tenderness. Sometimes you can also find guarding rigidity and debound tenderness as well, which are not there in cases of chronic cholecystitis and biliary colic. So these are the physical findings which can be helpful to differentiate between acute cholecystitis and biliary colic. Sometimes it may be possible to feel the gallbladder itself. Sometimes you can palpate the gallbladder. And Murphy sign, what is Murphy sign? It is the inspiratory arrest during subcostal palpation is regarded as pathognomic of acute cholecystitis, right? So what is the pathognomic sign of acute cholecystitis? It is the positive Murphy sign. What is Murphy sign? It is the inspiratory arrest during the subcostal palpation. So these are the this is the picture showing typical sign and symptoms of acute cholecystitis. Patient will have fever and leukocytosis. He or she can have jaundice, nausea, vomiting, anorexia, fat intolerance, abdominal fullness, abdominal distension, pain in the right upper quadrant or right shoulder, which can radiate to back, and this pain increases with breathing and movement. So Murphy sign is if there is Murphy sign, it establishes the diagnosis of acute cholecystitis. And if you do TLC count of this patient, then TLC count is usually 12,000 to 14,000, means leukocyte count is raised. But if this leukocyte count is very much raised, means it is 25,000 or 30,000, then the diagnosis is usually empyema of the gallbladder. So in empyema of the gallbladder or perforation of the gallbladder, leukocyte count is usually raised in 20,000 or 30,000 range. Whereas in acute cholecystitis, there is mild leukocytosis. Mild leukocytosis means the normal count is 4,000 to 11,000. Whereas in acute cholecystitis, it is usually raised in 12,000 to 14,000. So if in a patient with symptoms relating to gallbladder, your TLC count is raised 20,000 or 30,000, you should suspect empyema of the gallbladder or your gallbladder perforation. And the other investigation like bilirubin alkaline phosphatase, amylase, they can be raised in acute cholecystitis. So what are the differential diagnosis of acute cholecystitis? This is the differential diagnosis include acute pancreatitis, acute appendicitis, acute pyelonephritis, perforation of peptic ulcer, and sometimes biliary coli. So these are the differential diagnosis of acute cholecystitis. So what is the management of acute cholecystitis? You can manage the patient conservatively. Majority of the patient, they can be managed conservatively, but admission to hospital is generally required, and patient will require IV fluids, antibiotic, analgesia, and suspension of oral intake. So you have to keep the patient nil per only. So you will give antibiotic, IV fluids, analgesia, and if vomiting is there, you have to put nasogastric tube, RAL tube. And cholecystectomy can be performed on the next available list. Means you can do cholecystectomy within 72 hours of start of symptoms. So what is the management of acute cholecystitis? It can be immediate cholecystectomy within 72 hours, or you can manage the patient conservatively during this episode, and you can do interval cholecystectomy after 6 weeks, right? So this is the management of acute cholecystectomy. Thank you. अब क्या एग्जिट करो?